in. There's a handout that's being handed and passed around. We'll get started here in just a second as you get going. Lights, cameras, action. All right. Good afternoon. This is the 35th CALLERLAB convention. Today is the 18th of March. And my name is Tim Mariner. I'll be the moderator. And your panelist is Betsy. And this session today is on interchanging or the ability to change and adapting singing call figures. And first of all, I think probably the first question we would ask is, why would you want to even do such a thing? Why? I mean, why on earth would you interchange or change a singing call figure? For class situations. The choreography that was in the particular piece of music was not probably written for a class or student level dance. So at times you have to adjust choreography and singing call figures and routines because of just that. Sometimes it's an old piece of music and you get a hold of it and there's a curly cue in the middle of the sequence or a wheel fan through that's maybe not even being used at our program. So you do need to adapt and change. So there are times when maybe it's the same standard piece of choreography that every one of your records has, and you find out that in the third tip, while I'm using the same sequence over and over again, I need to maybe change the singing call figure. So, and you need to understand how that works and how to be able to do it and make the choreography fit the phrase of the music. Most standard music today is a 24-beat opener, figure 1, figure 2, middle break, figure 3, figure 4, and closer. Did I say 64?
You said 24.
Oh, I said, my mind was saying it was like 64, but 24 came out of my mouth. But it is a 64-beat phrasing that we have, okay, to make all of that work. And you need to know how to be able to put the lyrics of the song in as well as the choreography that will make things happen so that the dance will flow and they're not staying at home for 8 or 16 beats of music. And some stuff is written so that just happens. It's just bad. Well, we have a middle break with a side space grand square, allemande, and weave. You find yourself on the opposite side of the grid with 8 beats of music to get home, or 8 beats of music to get home, but there's 16 beats left of music, and so they're standing at home for 8 beats of music going, and now we breathe. And sometimes they'll even just turn around and look at you, want to know what on earth are you up to? So those are few reasons to have to interchange singing call figures. The question is, how do we do it? I think Betsy has a sheet here with some timing information that will really help.
I know that sounded loud. Another important reason for me to change singing call figures is if I am doing a square dance beginner party. I want to include the full square dance picture. To me, that includes singing calls. So if I'm doing a one-night party dance or an open house dance where people have never danced before in their lives, I sure as heck can't teach them the calls that go in a singing call figure and have them be successful. I need to change that particular figure. Well, my statement starts with, singing calls are easy. You just practice the figure which comes with the record and sing the call, right? Yeah, sure, Betsy. That works if, A, the figure supplied with the music has choreography that works. Sometimes they don't. B, if that particular figure that comes with the music times well and is suited to the group that you are calling for. Now, we've already discussed classes, beginner parties, and maybe you have a group of people who are older and a little slower and can no longer keep up. All of these factors impact upon whether or not you can use the singing call choreography that came with the record or whether you need to change it. So how does a caller prepare for this? Oh, and also one other thing. Maybe the singing call figure was recorded at Mainstream and you're calling for a Gung Ho Plus Club or an advanced group or even a challenge group that happens to like singing calls. You don't want to do a Mainstream singing call figure for these people, but you do maybe want to use the music. You need to be able to change the figure. How does this work? Well, first thing, there are available choreography, books, downloads of choreography that other people have written. And you can purchase or download singing call figures without writing your own. That's one way.
One of those is like Gene Trimmer's Singing Through Mainstream, Gene Trimmer's Singing Through Plus Advanced. They had them with hundreds of pieces of choreography that would fit 64-beat phrasing or timing for.
I believe Andy Shore has.
Andy Shore has one. That's right.
On his website.
Mm-hmm. And Vic Cedar does on
Vic
his
Cedar
website
also.
as well.
So those are some of the possibilities. But you need to understand the structure, which Tim explained, about 7 repetitions of 64 beats. And first thing you need to do is make sure that although we say most singing call records come that way, if you get a hold of an older record or somebody has been creative, that may not meet that rule. You need to listen to your music and count it out and find out if there are 7 repetitions of 64 beats. Or if somebody got really smart aleck and did 5 repetitions of 80 beats. It will time differently. First thing you need to do is study the structure of your music. Now, one of the things that means if most singing call structure has 8 repetitions or 7 repetitions of 64 beats, we're doing well with numbers, aren't we, Tim? If they do, then a singing call choreography that you like with piece A should theoretically work with piece B. So even before you download, buy a book or whatever, you can go to all your other singing call records and check the cheat sheets for figures you like.
Another thing, a reason why I would want to adapt a singing call figure is maybe I'm at a workshop situation and I featured this particular emphasis call for some reason. And then it would seem logical to put it into the singing call and be able to use it. And so in order for that to happen, you have to do some checker work and find a place and a way that will happen so that it will have proper timing, smooth choreography. The command time and the lead time will work with the music and whatnot.
Also, I these days when I'm working club dances like the theme around calls. And I'll pick 2 or 3 calls to theme around in the patter. And if I want to continue that theme in the singing call figure, I want to have singing calls available that use those particular calls. So I have a whole bunch that will allow me to do that. Same principle.
There are some records you can't change because they have vocals in it where it says left allemande, your corner, and do-si-do. And, some backup harmonies that, boy, you just can't sing over because these allemande and weave the ring lines come in too loud.
Right. If they're singing allemande and weave the ring, you really can't get around that. If they're singing lyrics of the song, then what you have to do, maybe... Let's start with a standard singing call figure that a lot of people use, which would be heads promenade halfway, come down the middle, square through 4. Heads promenade halfway, sides right and left through. Sides square through 4, and do-si-do and 8 chain 4. And in first place, a lot of people use it. I wouldn't guarantee that I would use it exactly, but that's a pretty standard piece of choreography that people use. And then they might put in lyrics, which are timed to do with the 8 chain 4. If you wanted to work that with a plus singing call, you would have to figure out a way to put in a long plus figure, which would allow you to sing the lyrics while they're doing the plus figure. For example, spin chain and exchange the gears, or spin chain the gears might work instead of the do-si-do and 8 chain 4. That would be something that you would have to study as a caller so that you could then use the record with a harmony and still have it work.
That's right. Understanding the quadrant of where things happen is very important. When I'm in a static square, and if I were to put it and visualize it as a grid, where I'm standing is home position, and I'm the number one couple, or in the man spot or the girl spot, whatever way you envision. I see the rest of the grid in front of me, north, south, east, and west. And if that's the case, then if I'm at home, a right and a left grand will put me all the way to the top, which will be north in my category, all the way to the top of the grid of the square. And I know I have 16 beats of music to get home on a promenade. And if I swing in the southwest quadrant of the square, promenade is full 16 beats around the entire square on a promenade, all the way around. 8 will take you halfway. 16 will get you all the way around. Okay? So if that's the case, then every time you swing in this lower quadrant, and if it's a corner progression, then you're going to find that you'll have 16 beats to be able to sing a lyric or what have you. But if your piece of choreography has you to swing your corner and you're in the northeast quadrant, or worse yet, you're in the northwest quadrant, it's a short promenade, and the dancers are going to do that. They'll go to the home spot, stop, and wait. And yet I see people who will adapt singing call figures and not take that into account. Thank you very much. They won't take that into account and think everything's just hunky-dory. They'll promenade home and they'll just keep singing. The dancers suffer. The dance suffers.
And I myself only want to sing if people aren't moving if I'm in church. I don't sing to an audience like I would not necessarily feel comfortable doing a concert for you people sitting here. If you were all moving on the dance floor, I'm happy. If I've got you home and I still have lyrics to sing, I'm not real thrilled with that. Thank you very much.
I know another reason why I would adapt a singing call figure too, and it just came to my mind, is the idea that the dancer's abilities, if I'm calling along and I have to sing this 4 times through, and the first time you do it, the square breaks down, or the square, there's no reason to suffer them 4 more times. Change that sequence and allow them, or three other times. Change the sequence so that they will then have success.
One of the things you can also be prepared with for such a situation as the square broke down, or they succeeded in the singing call figure but they fell behind. So now all of a sudden you're not really with the music. One of the things that you can be prepared with is a figure that does not meet the full 64 beats of choreography, what I would call short-timed. Maybe you have 48 beats of choreography, and that includes a swing and promenade, but they were far enough behind, so if you use that particular figure, then you can put the whole room back on track. And that can be an important factor, especially if you have newer dancers who are really hesitant about succeeding or they're nervous. You don't want to put increasing pressure on them to hurry when they're already falling behind. It will simply take away the dance experience of the singing call. So I have some timing things. Now there is a CALLERLAB timing sheet. Some of the timing is included in with the definitions. There's also a separate sheet, I believe, that you can download, because I keep going to the web and doing it again because I forget where I've put mine. I have lots of copies lurking about. But the CALLERLAB timing sheets are the tools which can allow you to write your own singing call figures to maybe incorporate that call that you've planned to workshop or teach. Although I will give a caveat. Boy, now I'm speaking Latin to people who speak all kinds of other languages. Buyer beware. I personally feel that if I'm teaching a class, the dancers in that class are not yet ready to do a figure that I taught that night in a singing call, which will be closely timed and up to speed. And I would say exceptions being the first and second nights of class, but singing calls I use on the first and second nights of class are not closely timed. They are short-timed. Because I expect that the dancers will have more reaction time. You know, reaction time, of course, is the time Tim says the call. It goes into my ear, into my brain. Brain panics, process, down to the feet, and the feet move. For experienced dancers, that may be 1 or 2 beats. For dancers with a brand new call, that could be up to 4 beats before the feet move, which means they're 2 beats behind on that call before they ever take step 1.
So you find yourself with new dancers mostly doing things that you just wouldn't do with your average mainstream or plus floor, and that's putting in things like all 8 to the middle with a great big holler, and that becomes part of a sequence. So other floor will maybe be able to catch up, but it's a floor leveling. Well, maybe they didn't get a chance. They were still promenading because they had fumbled the figure previous. And so when you 8 to the middle and come on back, now everybody's back on the same page with timing-wise to get going. Sometimes you have to eliminate a do-si-do to do that as well on occasions. So very rarely do we have singing call figures as they come off the producer line with all 8 to the middle with a great big holler. Okay? So,
but it is a good way to keep the other people moving while the square that was struggling catches up. Now I have the timing. I spoke about the timing sheets. So my first example I have is a sample figure that uses the mainstream calls Cloverleaf and Pass the Ocean. And the Pass the Ocean is a slightly unusual formation. So if you've got a handout, it heads star through, and that takes 6 beats from a static square, double pass through, cloverleaf, and the numbers are the beats that it takes. Centers pass through, right and left through. Now, if you visualize this, they are in an 8-chain through position. You normally call Pass the Ocean from facing lines or a static square. So this is a slightly unusual use of Pass the Ocean. But you can call it from there, and they will accept it. You Pass the Ocean, girls trade, recycle, slide through, and swing your corner. And I've set them up so they're in the quadrant where they're going to promenade full around. So this adds up to 64 beats, including the full promenade. One possible problem that I have run into periodically is the corner swing is right at home. And some of the modern square dancers in the U.S., I'm not sure about Japan or Europe, but I know some of the dancers in the U.S. The guy will swing, say, Tim's my corner, and he's right there at home when we swing, and he'll go, okay, I'm home. And I've allowed for a 16-beat promenade, and he's not going to do it. If I have, to be honest, that bothers me. And I, as a person calling the dance, if most of the floor is not, or all, decides not to promenade for the 16 beats while I'm singing the lyric, for the tape, I lowered the microphone, stood or sat and smiled. And I'll say something about, you don't promenade, I don't have to sing. And hopefully I've got a good enough voice so that's a reward for me singing. Rather than, well, I'm not going to promenade because she sings awful. But that's what I do.
We have a question in the back. We'll need a microphone. Please come up front. I have it.
Yeah.
If you have a question, please come up to the microphone, state your name, tell us your question or comment.
My name is Jimmy Aiken. I'm from San Diego, and I can understand what you just said if maybe the whole floor is not doing it. In fact, I've seen Tim Crawford theme a tip around getting people to not do certain calls and then pretend to be progressively more frustrated with them as they don't do them. But when I've been calling, there are certain dancers who are physically challenged. They've got bad backs. They're really elderly. And if I see them decide to just not promenade just so they can have a little bit of an extra rest, I think that's great because it helps keep them in the activity.
Oh yeah, there's always the exceptions to the rule. But I could be wrong, But as a person who stands there for the 2 hours or 2.5 hours, and let me tell you, I do not find standing necessarily restful. But if I know they're short of breath, if I know they have a problem with their legs or whatever, no, those aren't the people I'm going to not sing to.
No, I've seen Betsy do this, and it's the ones who are physically able. They just said, nah, I'm not going to bother promenade now. That sort of thing. When it's a part of the dance, it really is. Now, another thing that I find interesting that has evolved with singing calls is this terminology like swing and promenade. It's like it's just one move now, swing and promenade. And we say it, and yet we don't allow the dancers the time to get that, to do the swing or to do the promenade. They will choreograph a piece of singing call figure, a routine, that will be perfectly timed up to 64 beats, but this swing and promenade, there's really no beats to swing. You're 4 beats behind a swing. So what have they invented? This left star through, and then they go. They know that there's no time to do that. And in the olden days, there used to be swing and promenade on all patter figures, too. A lot of callers would choreograph in their patter calling swing and promenade. Well, it became a habit to the point where they can't get rid of the habit, swing and promenade, and yet now the dancers realize it's just a habit. They really don't want me to swing. I know this caller, so I'm not going to swing. I will promenade, however. Okay, so it's amazing that this still occurs. If you really want them to swing, then encourage it and give them the time to do it, and not just let it be a part of the word swing and promenade on the tag of a singing call.
And part of this also is in knowing who the dancers are and what they're used to. I've forgotten your name already. Jimmy. Jimmy mentioned the people who might have physical problems where they couldn't swing and do a long promenade. But I come from the East Coast. I'm in New Jersey. And if I travel to New England, there is a tradition of swinging in New England where even the older people, as long as they are able, they swing longer than people in New Jersey. And I have to revamp some of my timing in order to make sure I allow for them to swing the way they want to, or they're going to be mighty peeved at me.
Same way if you call a youth and you call a weave the ring and they're bumping off of each or twirling off of every other hand as they're going along. That timing will change the figure. You got to change and adapt now to allow their style of dance. And it's not my job to say, you're not doing that right. No, they're having fun and they're smiling. They obviously are doing it right. I now have to adapt to what their style of technique is.
And one of the things I'll do if I know I have an older crowd is instead of doing a 16-beat promenade and having them swing their corner in the home quadrant, I will do something that flip-flops the square. So the promenade will then only be the 8 beats. So I will be easier on them. There's also times when I work with a group at a senior center, and they have a limited number of basic calls, and some of them are getting quite old, and I just make sure that I time it so that they're not going to be rushed, and also so they don't do the full promenade in a lot of figures. I have also been known I found that I could not rush them in sides, face, grand square once I'd taught that. Like if I call to a club where I have experienced dancers and I'm singing the lyric and they're not quite home and I get to the point where I have to say sides, face, grand square, and they're going to have to take another 2 steps before they can do the sides, face, grand square. Experienced dancers will do that. They'll go home, they'll face the center, and they'll do the call. The dancers I work with at the senior center, if I said sides, face, grand square, would not succeed. So I have, learned that I cannot hurry them in that. And once or twice I've done something like circle left, Alaman left. I missed where I needed the timing for. Mm-hmm. And I've done circle left, Alaman left your corner, come back, promenade, everybody go forward and back, sides, face, grand square, and I finished the singing call lyric with a grand square. They finish at home and bow to your partner, and I never call the promenade at all because that is what suits them. And part of that is just, knowing your audience.
Wow. And and having the ability to do that on the fly. I mean, Betsy's called enough to know how to make that happen. She has the feel of the music. She knows when it's about time to be home. And now I need to get it so I can resolve it and make it happen. And I'd love to say that there's a formula. Yeah, well, there is if you want to do timing work and write it out and refer back to the timing chart on each figure. The other thing is just the knowing or having a sense of how much time you have to do things. And that comes by feeling and sensing the 64-beat phrasing, or knowing when I'm about to run out of time, really knowing your music.
One of the things I did while Art's coming up, one of the things I did in the page in the handout is the next example flip-flops the square halfway around, so that it's the same basic figure, but I have the heads promenade half while the sides do a right and left through. And basically, since they're all moving at once, I'm allowing 8 beats to accomplish that, although there's 2 different actions happening at the same time. Then I have the sides slide through. They're already in the center, so instead of 6, it takes 4. And double pass through, clover leaf, centers pass through, blah, 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 blah. When I get to the slide through in the corner swing, they're across the square from home. So in this time, the promenade only takes 8 beats. So, and again, for people who might have trouble doing the full 16-beat promenade, I might, instead of using example 1, go to example 2 to save them steps, but allow them to promenade while I'm singing the lyric. It might be another strategy that I would use. Yeah.
Harvey Las Cruces. We have to be adaptable for the people that we're calling for. And I've called for seniors for most of my calling career, which is 29 years, okay? And when I was calling at Leisure Road for 5 years, I left on a singing call. Most of them that were printed, head square through, do-sa-do, swing through, or something like that. Leave out the do-sa-do. You cut the 64-beat figure down to 56 to give them time to get all the way around. We have to be able to adapt to everything we're doing. And that's when I really started changing the singing call figures so that we could work with the different groups.
Point. And I know, too, with some of the youth and teens, we just had a big festival on the East Coast, and when you go in to call to the teens, they're kind of rushing the timing a little bit and are able to get to the positioning, because they're smaller, a lot quicker. So now I found that, the choreography that I use for my senior group, I'm not going to be able to use the same stuff because there's going to be 4 or 8 beats of music left. So I have to insert stuff, don't I? I now have to add a do-si-do, or clap your hands and stomp your feet, or something.
Or a scoot back.
Yeah, or add an extra scoot back, or a 0 that will come back to take up that. Or swinger twice. Or swing, Alaman left, come back and promenade to take up another 4 or 6 beats of music. Right. Now, the other thing about timing some figures is the standard heads promenade halfway, come down the middle, square through 4, right and left through, veer left, Ferris wheel, square through 3, swing your corner promenade. If you time that on the timing chart exactly, it's 64 beats, right to the T, okay? But that's if you allow them 64 beats of music to start on beat 1. Most of the time, we rob the first 4 beats by saying, hey, now those heads. Okay? And now the heads because we want to sing like the pattern of the song, which is more familiar to us. And that goes into understanding lead time and being able to provide, just like you would a prompt for grand square, sides face grand square, to give them the beat 1 to start their movement. Which means that if you want to use that figure, I almost have to lead time it, which means I might have to cut the tag off of the previous sequence and then go into heads promenade half. They get the downbeat. They have 64 beats to do all of it without rushing it, or without them doing that slanted veer, drag the girl with them Ferris wheel action. That now their short dancers have learned to shortcut that sequence.
Oops, turn microphone on. Another thing that you can do is build into your singing calls what I call the time fillers or the zeros. Things that take up beats that people will dance, but if you are running into trouble, you can take them back out. And I have a sheet of examples of timing plus and mainstream calls. And basically, if you read down that sheet, and I'm not necessarily going to, I'll read one, but we don't have to do them all. Let's take the first one. Heads or sides, depending on where you are. Square through, that's 10 beats. Swing through is 6. And the parenthetical phrase is the total of beats for each figure. Boy, didn't you like that parenthetical phrase? I'm impressed. Boys run, that's 4 beats. So we're up to 20. Ferris wheel, so it takes 6 beats, up to 26. Centers pass through, that took 2, and we're up to 28. But the important choreography is done. The rest of what is on this sheet is time filler. Touch a quarter, because they're already there facing their corner. They could swing their corner and promenade if necessary. Touch a quarter, scoot back, 1, scoot back, 2, corner swing, which can be flexible. It can be between 4 and 8 beats depending on where you are in the country and what kind of swingers you have. And then promenade, it's a full 16-beat promenade. But this pattern adds up to 64 and has 14 beats of time filler. If they fall behind, I can eliminate 1 scoot back. I can eliminate 2 scoot backs. If I eliminate both scoot backs but do the touch a quarter, I got to do something else. And the funniest one that you can do at mainstream, which will work after they blink at you, is, centers pass through, touch a quarter. Great, now what do I do? Everybody fold. And it takes a couple of beats and maybe a beat extra for them to go, ah! And then they'll swing their corner. And what happens if they don't do the fold? When I say swing their corner, they're holding their corner by the right hand. They're going to find them anyway. It's not like their corner is far away. So even if they don't get the fold, they're going to find their corner. At worst, one folds and one doesn't, and somebody taps somebody on the shoulder and the other person turns around.
It's just similar with a trade and roll effect. It's very similar to come up with the same. But how many of you have heard the Hooked on Elvis song, old rhythm record, Hooked on Elvis? Okay. Timing isn't very good with that record. Because it's just, so you have to learn how do I adapt that to really make it fit today's dancers. I find that I have to use the figure the first time through. The second time I do it, I'll leave out the do-si-do for it to be able to time well so they can get home, so then I can get back into the grand square routine that is real popular with that particular singing call. So just be aware of the little tricks that we're telling you about, what to either leave out or to put in to make them fit and adjust. Now,
John Kaltenthaler tells a story. He was calling for a class dance. And it was, most of the way through mainstream, but not all the way through mainstream. And he called a figure similar to the one I just read, and got to the point where it was touch a quarter, and he went, they don't have scoot back. And what he called was centers trade, twice. It accomplishes absolutely nothing. It was a little bit of a surprise, still giving the dancers time to succeed.
Another one that we fail to use sometimes is the term balance. And I use it, and I want them to really balance. And I teach balance, and I want them to move forward and back. And I want it to be a 4-beat action, not this lift the leg and think I've balanced now. And which takes no beats.
Or not lifting any legs, just going bend forward and back.
They just bend. We're surfing. But if you do that, then you can utilize it as a buffer, if you will, for some singing call routines that you can add into it. And balance, now the centers trade.
For
Wait, we need you right on a mic.
Ron Nelson Anderson. One of the simplest ones I've come up with is a lot of singing calls have swing and promenade. If I see they're ahead of time, I'll have them do an Alaman left and come back and promenade.
one of the ones I use with my group at the senior center that dances a limited number of calls. I don't have scoot back. And they can do trades, but they're a little shaky on trades or touch a quarter, so I might really destroy things if I use that. But when I'm having them coming out to their corner and I know I'm ahead, I have actually used pass through, you turn back, swing your corner. It's very simple, and yet it uses up the extra time, and they're still close enough to their corner that hopefully they're not going to lose them. I say hopefully. There's always room for challenges.
It's creative dancing.
Yes,
right.
Creative applications of our choreography. So what you can do if you're working on doing singing calls for, changing the figures for people with a limited number of calls is figure out what extenders you can add if they happen to get smooth enough so you have to add something. The pass through Alaman left come back, actually pass through Alaman left come back, swing and promenade adds even more. Now it used to be, and we've gotten out of this habit, it's interesting how patterns come and go in popularity. It used to be that we would call swing your corner, and if they were ahead, you could say Alaman left new corner, come back and promenade. Dancers in this day and age are not successful with that because they have done swing your corner and promenade so often that before you can get any other words out of your mouth after swing your corner, they will be promenading. I actually, in class, work patterns early on where I have them swing their corner and circle left, and swing their corner and circle left, and swing their corner and circle left, or swing their corner and circle right because I'm tired of left, so that I get people in the habit of not just promenading after swinging. But that would take training on, the caller or teacher, whatever, retraining some of the existing dancers. So you have to be aware of things.
Also going into, we've been talking mostly figures, but your opener, middles, and closers do allow some interesting things that you can do. I like the circle left things because that will allow you to sing the music. And I think for singing calls, the more you can put words that are familiar to that particular song, the more user-friendly, or the more it sounds like the original, less like a square dance where I'm just putting in a lot of words. So I will use a lot of the original lyrics. But now, if I'm doing, and I have a sequence where there's a circle left, and I want to sing, then Alaman left, do-si-do, I'm going to do a men star left, bring them back to turn their partner with a right arm or a turn through, to an Alaman left, swing and promenade, so they'll have the long promenade around. And I'll do that instead of what is written, which is Alaman left and weave, now, which is just contrary to what I said. The reason I like to not do the Alaman and weave at the opener in the middle is because I want, I'd much rather use all the words to the original, but I want better timing mostly. And when I'm doing a sequence like that, I want them to be able to get the timing right when they get back to home. But my last time through with the closer, what does it matter? There's not another sequence after that, is there? So if they get home a little quicker, they can swing longer, maybe, or it really won't matter. I can say swing or come up creatively with something else. So for the tag, for the last time through, I'm going to use the Alaman left and weave line because I realize it's going to sacrifice a little bit of timing, but when they're home, I'm done anyway. So I can insert the original lyrics the last time through and sequence 7. Yes. Did that make sense?
Like a lot of us, I imagine, I work a good bit with dancers who are challenged in getting through singing calls, and I have a couple questions about working with them. The first question is, how important is changing figures at all for such dancers? I've had a lot of people say, well, you should use at least 2 different figures in each singing call, otherwise it's boring. But sometimes I'm dealing with a square that has 1 or more square grenades in it. And if I find something that works with a square with square grenades in it, I'm inclined to just leave the figure alone and just run them through it 4 times just so they have the feeling of success of having gotten through a singing call without the square blowing up. What's your thought on that?
Okay. My reason for changing figures in a singing call is to adapt them to the people that I want to succeed in my square. I do not necessarily, I'm not changing a figure each and every sequence through the singing call in order to, quote, make it interesting. I am changing the figure to meet my theme. I'm changing the figure to allow newer dancers to succeed. I'm changing the figure that came with the original singing call, not changing at each sequence. I perfectly think if you have found something that succeeds for those dancers, they're not going to be bored, and I'm not going to worry about them being bored if you use the same figure 4 times through. I think that's absolutely acceptable.
The second question I had about him was a timing question. Tim, did you want to say something to that?
Yeah, I just wanted to add that that's the reason why round dancers dance the same song and they get on the floor for Taste of the Wind or for what's one of the more popular. Número Cinco. All right. Okay, Houston. Okay, all right. So they've done Houston 1,000 times, yet the floor fills when Houston comes on again. And the reason they don't care that it's the same piece of round dance choreography. In fact, they find it very relaxing. And so that's the reason why I don't change all the time singing call figures with certain songs, because it's a time for them to relax, to enjoy the music, and on occasion I won't change it.
And I'm just going to mention one other thing. There are always people who want more challenge even in their singing calls, and usually they are the most vocal people. The people who like it 4 times the same are not the ones that are going to come up to you and say, I liked it because you kept the singing call figure the same each time. They're probably not going to notice. They're just happy dancing. The ones who want the challenge are what I call the vocal minority, and they may, you should not necessarily always respond to them.
And why puzzle them the last singing call of a night? I mean, you want to kind of let them enjoy the dance and relax them, and they're going to, I want them whistling the tune on the way out the door, not, what was that last sequence that we just didn't seem to get? How come I didn't sense, what was that?
My second question was about timing for some of these dancers. If I see the floor, the square or 2, however many there are having trouble keeping up with me, I've heard different philosophies about what to do in that circumstance. One is to just slow down the music. Another is to short time the figures. And it's after experimenting with both of those and having mixed success, I'm thinking that the actual solution may be some combination of the two, that you need to have the music slow enough that if they're an elderly group, they can step to the music. Otherwise, if they just can't keep up with the beat, then they're going to fall out of it and just walk, and they lose all sensation of dancing. But as long as they can keep up with the music, then short timing is the way to go. Is that what you would think, or would you think something else?
I believe it's a combination, but I already believe that I run most of my music slightly off 45. When I work on mini disc, when I record it to the mini disc, I record, I may parade around in what I call the media room where I'm doing my work and recording, and I'll find, I'm not that young, I'm not that old, I've danced a long time, luckily my knees are still good, but I'll find something that I think is a comfortable pace, and I will record it at that pace. I will probably not slow it down much from that pace after that, because it's already slower than it might have come out on the record CD or MP3, depending on your media. But then, if I find they're having trouble, that's when I will use a figure that's short-timed with the expectation that if I catch them up, I can always add touch a quarter and scoot back or some other small zero time filler to bring them out with the music. So it's a matter of flexing back and forth on both.
Robert Morris from Whittier. One time I was having a practice at my house, and I did the same singing called figure through this record. One guy said, "You got to change it every time." The other lady over here says, "Oh, no, you can't change it at all." I thought that was funny myself. Another question. Sometimes I've tried to change the figure, and the figure that I choose just doesn't seem to work with the music. It's just something's not right.
Yeah. Part of it has to do with how you deliver the figure and whether or not you can meter the words to fit the song. And metering has nothing to do with the number of beats. It's how you work your voice in with the song and the lyrics, the way they're written. Now, my statement about metering is if a caller is really working, like, I've heard Tim do it, whatever, he's really chanting with the music and going and going and going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny, and every single syllable has a beat, and then we just go on. If he delivers something that doesn't fit that beat, then he just ruins the rhythm. And there are times when the way you have to deliver the call doesn't meet the rhythm of that particular song. And that's when that figure doesn't seem to work. Part of that is to get a set of figures and practice them with different singing calls that you use so that you can see which way, maybe changing or swing your corner to corner swing will allow you to deliver it. It may be something as simple as that, or it may be this one doesn't scan to that particular piece of music. And they don't, even though they may time, the way you deliver the words and the rhythm within the notes of the beats is what feels funny. I'm not sure if that made sense or not.
Yes, it did. Various types of rhythms of singing calls, the metering is just a little different than a standard country western boom chuck beat. And so you have to really adjust the delivery of, just as what Betsy said, of the call. And when it might be just as easy as saying, do an Alaman left or Alaman left with your corner to try to fit it in so that the metering will work. I've had situations where I can't figure it out. Maybe the metering is bad or is off a little, or there's some musical instrument that's throwing it off. And at which point you've got to sacrifice maybe the song totally.
Or next time you do that song, change to another figure so that you can deliver it comfortably and you're happy. Part of that may be practicing sometimes at home. I myself keep cards. I have some figures memorized for Mainstream Plus and Advanced, and I can call them off the top of my head. Tim probably has more memorized. He's just sitting there. But anyway, I know what I can use off the top of my head. When I want to use something different or pick a piece of choreography that fits my theme for that tip, I have I think it's 8 by 10 cards. I have cards. And I have written singing call figures, and I have them on the cards, and maybe this card has 4 figures on it, and each one of them will theme around cloverleaf. So If I find that the one doesn't meter right and I'm not comfortable delivering it, I may change to number 2 and do number 2 for 3, 4, and 5, for 2, 3, and 4 of that. So I've only changed the figure once because I found something that was comfortable. But I've worked these for a while, so I kind of know these days what they are. And my personal way of organizing this, like maybe I've picked a piece of a singing call that the original figure was mainstream, but I'm calling a plus dance and I want to theme around a certain plus call. I have cards I have cards for mainstream singing call figures. I have cards for plus singing call figures. I have cards for A1, A2, and C1 singing call figures. Now, I could easily grab the wrong card, get partway through the figure, and go, I can't call that. Now I'm really stuck. So my way, I was an art major in college, so I think in colors. My way of adapting these cards so that I had them organized was they're written in like Flair pen and different color ink. If I pull a stack of cards that has writing on them in black, they're mainstream. If I pull a set of cards that has writing on them in red, they're plus. Blue is A1. A2 is kind of a pinky purple. Mauve. And C1 goes back to black, but there's no way I'm going to mess up between C1 and mainstream, so I'm pretty safe. And what I'll do when I'm calling a dance is I'll kind of thumb through the cards when I'm getting ready to go and say, okay, I picked these particular figures to theme around. Here's a singing call card that has a couple of selections of figures for that, and that I can use that in my singing call. And that's why and how I manage this whole system.
A lot of people have computers too, and you can do the same thing by filing in your laptop different categories and being able to pull up singing call routines and figures and things like that. But I have heard some atrocious figures on singing calls in the last couple of years, even more so than I have in the last 35 years. And I know that there's a push or a movement for more puzzle on times, and I know there's a group of dancers that don't like the same standard vanilla sequence and choreography figures, but oddly enough, the ones with the more technical choreography don't sell as well. And you scratch your head and wonder why, because can't you just adapt the singing call figure? A lot of people can't. A lot of people don't know how. And so it is our hopes that we are shedding a little light on just that. One sequence that was really amazing was heads star through, pass through, star through, pass through, as couples hinge, mainstream, yeah, sure, half tag, after couples hinge, not so great.
Oh, yeah.
All 8 circulate, boys run, 8 chain 5, swing and promenade. Now it's
crash,
wow.
Burn.
You can stop as soon as I said couples hinge, first of all. No. It's a little more. But, hey, that's how they did it. 4 times through because I liked it. And I've seen choreography that doesn't work. There's been some that have flat out not work. And yet it was done 4 times through because somebody didn't check it. Yeah, they just didn't take the time.
And that's
to check
the important thing. Part of what we're saying is, no, you don't have to change singing call figures every single time. That's not what we recommend. But yes, you should be able to adapt singing calls that you like the music, so you can call them at an open house dance, a beginner party, at your mainstream club with a mainstream figure, at your plus club with a plus figure, at your advanced club with an advanced figure, and be comfortable doing each of those.
I had one
if you want to.
I had one that I had released where when it came to the cue sheet, one call was missing. And I didn't realize it, but I didn't proofread it. It wasn't, it just was released. It wasn't my job. Somebody else did that. But if the caller was then looking at the cue sheet and there was no pass-through, and he's in a double pass-through formation and now calling 8-chain 6, it ain't going to work. So be aware that sometimes there's mistakes. Mistakes happen.
Don Casper, Mannheim, Germany. One of the things that I have used in changing singing call figures too sometimes, because I'll tell you the background for this, I'm also a round dance cuer, and I know some of these songs in the original because we use them for round dancing too. And sometimes part A of the song can be completely different than part B. And in the singing call, it uses part A as the opener, middle break, closer, and part B as the figure. Sometimes you may want to do, for the second or the fourth time through part B, meaning your fourth figure, you may want to not do the corner progression there, but use some more of the original lyrics instead and do like a circle left or a grand square type thing in there, and then do your corner progression in what would normally be the closer as a little change too. But you got to know the song, and you got to know the timing, and you got to know how to do it.
Doing this work simply will make you a flexible enough caller so that if you're doing lessons, you never have to say what somebody told me their sister heard in her classes, which is about 2/3 of the way through, the caller informed them, you guys are now ready to do a singing call. That means that caller couldn't call a singing call without the choreography that came with the record. We can do better than that.
We should. Entertainment. And we need to entertain the dancers right from day one, right from the start. And that's the whole aspect. We hope you've enjoyed this session. Realize they're a little shorter, but we hope you enjoyed and maybe be able to utilize and adapt singing calls in the future. What about a nice hand for Betsy Gada, gang?
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Tim Mariner.
I enjoyed it. Thank you.
And thank you all for coming.
Put down in your critique sheets how you like the sessions and whatnot, and enjoy the rest of your convention. Enjoy dinner. Thank you.